Oh, I'm so excited about this. We've never done this before.
Have we?
No.
23 years of marriage?
23 years of marriage. Welcome to Marriage Monday, arm wrestling edition. So,
I just feel bad that everyone's going to see how much stronger I am.
just remember the Word of God is right here. So, don't try and cheat.
Never.
Right? Did you ever see that Sylvester Stallone movie where he puts like his hands over the top and that's when he goes, what was that? Over the top. Yeah, it was called Over the Top.
Really?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Okay, on the count of three. Okay, 1, 2.
I'll break my hand.
Well, you gotta have more room. Yeah, you gotta. There's no. Okay, 1, 2.
Your arms are longer. Okay.
Okay, 1,
Are you flexing?
1. This is just how my arms normally look.
Okay, I know. That's actually 3.
Oh! You totally cheated.
No.
Look, you guys saw that. My wife cheated.
When you got it, you got it.
Oh man!
I just saw the one hand just come down.
That was not Sylvester
Why
Stallone
did you want me to do
over the
that?
top, because arm wrestling is kind of a great metaphor for the fact that the enemy would love it if a husband and wife are at odds with each other, that we're constantly in a power struggle between who's in charge.
Yeah, or the weaker sex feels like sad because of the less power.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then
That's
the
okay.
even more weaker sex has to like cheat to get on,
Wow.
get more power.
Yeah, no, I see where you're going with this.
we're just having fun, obviously, but the enemy would love if a husband and wife spent their entire marriage battling each other.
Sure.
And I always feel like the world pits us against each other because of roles and expectations
Yeah.
and those kind of things. And I know that God has called us to a different way of living.
Right.
That's called mutual submission.
Right.
So not where I'm lording it over you or you're lording it over me, but we're following the Lord in actually submitting to each other.
Right, which kind of starts with, I think, what is the most probably basic fundamental part of our Christian faith that I struggle with on a regular basis, which is laying down my rights. Right?
Yeah.
My right to be heard, my right to be seen, my right to be whatever, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And I mean, if I don't get that right, everything else is going to be a struggle in our marriage. I'm not going to be able to submit to it. Like, well, I need to be heard, and I need to have things equal, and I need to have things shared. And I mean, this last week alone, I don't think I cooked a single meal. I am so thankful that we don't cook evenly, because then our kids would not eat half of the meals, because you did 100%. Like a week at least.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done 100% of the laundry.
But you also made
So-
chocolate chip cookies, and no one wants me to do that.
That's true.
Um,
But what I'm saying is, like, it's
Yeah.
like this, there's this battle sometimes we get into where things have to be equal, or we don't feel like the person's carrying the load. And, there's seasons of that. And there is those things we have to talk through just on a practical level. But it's the warring. It's
Right.
the battling
Right.
for that
yeah.
we can't stay there.
Yeah. So our here, put your arm back up. Our arms are,
Supposed to lose again?
are either going to be locked in battle, or we are going to be locked in strength.
I wasn't trying.
And so, 1 Peter 3, I was listening to a teaching from John Bevere, and he was hitting on this passage about husbands and wives, and
Right.
I was reading, and I'm like, oh, this is a great picture, because it talks about the wife's arm, or the wife's role of strength in
Yeah.
the marriage, and then the husband's role. So I thought, I don't know if you want to read that,
Sure.
starting in verse 5 there, but it kind of
Yeah,
talks
1
about...
Peter 3. This is
Yeah.
how the holy women of old made themselves beautiful. They put their trust in God and accepted the authority of their husbands. For instance, Sarah obeyed her husband, Abraham, and called her master. You are her daughters when you do what is right without fear of what your husbands might do. Wow.
You're going to start calling me master?
Well, she was a biblical lady, and I admire her, but
That's not the point of this passage.
No.
The point is that a wife's strength comes from trusting God in her husband.
right. Not
Right.
necessarily even trusting him,
Right. Yeah.
trusting God in him.
Yeah.
So, single ladies, marry a godly man.
Ooh, that's
Marry
a good point.
godly man, because you want to trust their ability to hear God. You want to trust their ability to judge with wisdom and with integrity and with godliness. And we see far too many examples out there of men and women that just don't. And so be careful Little mama's who you choose. Same thing for men. Because I want to be able to trust, like I can trust that as we parent, as we pastor, as we live and make decisions in every scope, that you're going to seek the Lord. I can trust that.
Right.
And
And that's meant.
and that's not a perfect.
No, because
perfect thing.
And I love that because this is saying that your strength comes from trusting God's strength to get through to me, even when
Right.
I'm thick-headed, even when I'm stubborn, which can happen
Never happen.
sometimes. But instead of you forcing me towards something that you want, this is the picture of a woman's strength comes from trusting that God is stronger than my will.
Right.
And God's going to
That he'll
get
get
through
through
to
to you.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and believe it or not, guys, sometimes God sounds exactly like your wife.
It's true.
It's amazing how often God's voice sounds like your voice.
Yeah. The Holy Spirit.
But then he goes
We're
on,
working on it.
for the husbands, and it says, in the same way you husbands must give honor to your wives, treat your wife with understanding as you live together. She may be weaker than you are. And again, that's not weaker in terms of importance. That's just weaker in terms of strength. Typically, a woman, as we just saw there in that example, typically is a little bit weaker physically than a man.
Right.
But not, it says, but she is your equal partner. So we're
Yeah.
both together in this, in God's gift of new life. Treat her as you should. Listen to this, guys. So your prayers will not be hindered. Now, this is massive. Think about right now, guys, if your prayers are not being answered, it could be because you're not honoring your spouse the way God has called you to.
Ouch.
So if a wife's strength, her arm in this, is to trust God to get through to her husband, a man's strength, our arm in this marriage, is to actually serve our wives.
Yeah.
And if you're not serving your wife, if you're using her, if you're just allowing her to just do everything that you want, then we are doing the opposite of what Christ has called us to do. And it says here, Christ is not going to hear our prayers.
Yeah.
This is backed up in Ephesians 5, where we're called to lay down our lives for our spouse. And any time that I feel distant from God, I can usually trace it back to a place where I'm wanting to be served rather than finding a place to serve.
Right. Yeah. Ouch.
Yeah.
That's pretty heavy.
That's a big ouch. So if you want God to
Yeah.
answer your prayers, instead of asking her to do more, ask the Lord, what can I do for her?
Yeah.
And you actually end up in a place of strength. Then this
Yeah.
is totally different from the world's
No,
definition
it's
of
totally
strength.
opposite, and
Yeah.
it's cyclical both directions. Where when you're expecting a lot from me and you're not serving, it's harder for me to have respect and trust you to make decisions,
Oh.
and it's like this
It
negative.
becomes a fight.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a fight, and then
Yeah.
the opposite is true. Is when you're respecting me and you're honoring and you're serving and you're helping. It's easier for me to trust and believe you for the best and believe God in you for the best because I know that's what you're pursuing. You're pursuing
Right.
godliness.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's either going to be one way or the other, right?
And then when both of you are finding that place of mutual submission, just like this says, God will not only hear our prayers, but he'll be the strength of our marriage.
Yeah.
Instead of fighting against each other, we'll be fighting for each other.
Yeah.
So guys,
That's good.
that means finding a place to serve means instead of what is it that I want to do for a date, maybe it's what do you want to do, like going to Hobby Lobby and buying fall decor.
Yeah.
That's not what I want to do on a date, but it filled your tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it ended up being something good for our house.
For everybody. Even you guys.
I mean, look at this cute little pumpkin.
I know.
Wow.
See, I couldn't make that.
Yeah.
I'm not crafty. I only make people.
Well, and you've done a good job with that.
Thank you.
So we just want to encourage you to find your strength. Aren't this instead of wrestling with each other, find a place to serve each other in mutual submission, and
And two, we had a chance to pray with a really sweet couple
Yeah.
last night, and it just reminded me they've been married for a long time. You know, kids are grown, and in that next season of their life, with kids out of the house, learning to love each other in a new way, right? In a different season where you're not the same people. Like we're not the same people that we were 23 years ago. Thankfully, I like you even more. Right? Because of life experience stuff we've been through. I love and like you even more than I did 23 years ago because we've grown through so much. But sometimes couples end up in a place where it's like years
They
down the
grow
road.
apart.
Yeah. And so just to encourage you, if you're in that place, to continue to seek to serve each other, continue to seek to, like you challenge the couple, continue to look for what is God doing in them and bless that. Who is it that God's made them to be in this season, and love that person. Ask God to give you love for that person, serve that person, because there's a whole next level of our relationships if we're willing to push through the hard seasons and love each other exactly who we are in this season right now.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So for you, it was serving you and getting you a hand-knit pumpkin. For me, I think it's time for a pumpkin spice cold brew. You ready?
Let's do it.
Date night. Here we go. See you guys next week.
That sounds really good.